Okay, so we will go to the first chapter, the first tradition. Actually, last time we have go over most of the things, so I reorganized the slide. So at the beginning, I mentioned the difference between discover versus design. It mentioned human designed the fire, not discovered the fire. Human designed the wheels. And it's mentioned the Western bias. They value observation more than imagination. And I think there's a key point is design is more purpose-driven with intention, versus this discovery is more by chance. And they also mentioned that Da Vinci, is he a scientist or artist? He actually a designer. A designer is purpose-driven, use integrated approach towards the world. So they are like the prime creator of our experience of reality besides nature of God. So that's actually how the archaeologists differentiate human from other species is through any artifact made by human is through design. So design is the third way, is combination of art and science. And then they mentioned about reconstruct Sophia, because Sophia used to be the integration of thought and action, which is design. But later on, since peace no, we mentioned last time, then there's a separation between humanity and science into two different cultures, which reflect in our current education. So we separate science from craft, science from humanity, from thinking from doing, theory from practice, white collar from blue collar. Design is third culture, actually should be inclusive of both reason, which is science, and creativity, which is art. And then we trace back to the archetypal designer. So design, you have to imagine something does not exist, and you make it into a concrete form that is new and purpose addition to the reality. So design is addition to nature. So it both have potential, but also the fallible, which has unintended consequence we all experience nowadays with human invention, intervention of nature, like global warming, everybody knows. And so the design can create great service, but also could potentially create great harm, because we are not God. We cannot foresee the intended consequence. I think the reason is that because we don't have this comprehensive overall understanding of the whole universe. I think that's the human limitation. And then they trace back to archetypal designer, which is a Greek god. I have a hard time reading this name, Hippostos or something. So he actually, the lamb god, because he has so many imperfections, because to overcome the imperfection, he actually become very creative, and he has very handy, he create all these things. And through his creation, he overcome his imperfection and fulfilled his potential. And through this experience, he actually was able to help others to provide his service to others too. So design is as a way of overcome imperfection and fulfill our potential. And the next they're talking about why design. Why human want driven to design? Is that for survival, or is the continual improvement, development, human nature? Because we want to make difference in the world, participate in creation of nature. It's actually remind me why I want to be an architect at the beginning, because I want to leave something to the world after I die. I think a lot of architects may have that same intention. So we want to make the world our world. Basically, we try to create order in the world. Its design will is free will. Is we create something new and meaningful. It's new form, new reality. It's a source of free will. That's mystery to human nature. It's also traced back to the hero's quest, which we encounter a lot in this 52 living idea discussion. So it's as a way we can control our environment how we interact with the world. I think because of the world is not perfect and condition is not satisfied, so we lack this wholeness. We try to use design to overcome that. So meaning of enlightenment is bring order and give meaning to our life. That's the reason we design. And then they trace back to the history of design. Design is a combination of thinking and acting, but compared to science and art, there is lack of scholar history of design. And part of the reason because at the pre-Socratic time, Sophia means knowing hand. It's about thinking and action together. It's reflection and production. It means skill of craftsman. But after Plato and Aristotle, they separate the first principle and the cause, separate from practical wisdom and production action. Basically, they separate the thinking and doing. And Sophia was further divided the knowledge of idea and the capacity of practical actions. Since Plato time, the people who think become top of the society. The people who doing things become lower the society, which still exists in today at white collar and blue collar. So today we have white collar, blue collar, we have management and labor, thinker and doer. And so all these things is separated. And actually, design is the only way we can reintegrate this thinking and doing. Because I actually thinking the reason people study technology, they have so much power, but usually they're the people who don't think much, the people I encounter. And there's people who actually study art or philosophy, they think a lot. They have all these ideas to change society, but they don't have tools. So that's my observation. I think that's the reason because there is separation. People are powerless. They can't actually make much change in the world. And then they talking about the problem, solving wicked problem versus land problem. So nowadays we always encounter change through problems. So it's kind of like reactive mode we constantly experience. So we solve a problem, then we try to solve it. And we try to find the most effective and practical way to solve the problem. And that's become part of our education. But this reactive mode only works for tame problem versus the wicked problem, which is more important. Significant issues cannot be solved in this simple way. And in the real world, we actually encounter more important is the wicked problem, not tame problem. This reminds me about book smart versus street smart. Whether people have all the education, all the knowledge, but in the real world, they are powerless because they can only thinking in this street line way, more the book smart, they can solve the tame problem, but not wicked problem. So this graphic actually I found it quite interesting, show how the wicked problem have so many intertwined, so many things tied together. And then compare these two problems. Problem solution, tame problem is very straightforward. A wicked problem is very complicated. Most of our significant everyday encounter in the reality actually is wicked problem, not tame problem. So wicked problem is more complex, ambiguity, and unique. And so when we encounter this, the book thinks the only way the design wisdom actually is the way to help us get out of our current dilemma, actually help us to be able to solve this more wicked problem, because it has richer concept than just focus on solving problems. Because it's design, you have to have intention, lead to desirable approach reality. So you design something, instead you try to react to the problem to solve it. Then they're talking about the wisdom, the abstract versus reality. Before the pre-Socratic wisdom it's just about summarized data, is knowledge. But then there's a kind of like they have hard time to maintain the link between abstract and reality. The rational wisdom and unique design situation. And through the wisdom of design, actually, we need to reconstruct Sophia because the separation of this reasoning and kind of like thinking, feeling. I think because of that separation, we don't have overall holistic understanding of reality. That's actually our dilemma nowadays. That's why we cannot solve the global warming or other problems, because only through rational thinking you can really solve the real reality, the real problem in the wicked problem. So the idea is reconstitute so far, integrate of reason, observation, reflection, imagination, action, and production. That's the design wisdom. That's we have the opportunity to solve real life problem. And then they compare the design wisdom is reintroduce analog into the world, besides the digital and analytical thinking we are currently used in the Western world. And I think the digital and analytical is more about quantity versus analog is more about quality. It's talking about how we divide the time, into this zone, but it didn't nothing to do with how the quality of the time. So I think we conveniently divided academy into disciplines, which make our get much deeper in each subject. But at the same time, the specialization also make it so separated. So the understanding of the world is so separated. There's a lack of holistic picture. It's so divided. Then there's a comparison of analog and digital, how the reality is like this, and the digital we make so fragment understanding, and the flower, then how digitalized the flower look like. And the design wisdom kind of shifting between this experience, analog experience of life, and the digital analysis of life. Because you usually start design with reality, then you try to summarize, what is the problem, what do we want to create? You create this principle, then you come back to reality to find the solution, the unique problem solving. I think that's how design wisdom is kind of shifting between this analog and analytical thinking. Then we talk about the change. The design wisdom versus nature of change. We all encounter change every day. Sometimes through the scientific thinking, we think it's more rely on chance. Change is, so that's why we rely on the fate or luck. But it's through design point of view, we create change. We don't passively encounter change. We actually make changes. We make changes with our own intention and create it to our favor. So that's how design approach. And they think because use design, we make the change. We could potentially solve the dilemma of today. Today, the problem we are facing, we have too much information. The technology developed so fast, we can hardly catch up. And then we have lack of understanding of this whole world. We don't know even what's going on. So it's very hard to make a right decision. So a lot of times we make change. It's kind of, so the idea way of problem solving is like we have this, we collect all the information, we analyze, we make decisions. But in reality is there's so much information we can hardly understand. So we cannot really make the right decision. It's most of the time it's just emotional reactive because the world is too complex to deal with comprehensively. This reminds me of how we have the comprehensive on Wednesday. So it's helped us to actually to more comprehensively understand the world because it's become so complicated. So we, the book believe, the design as alternative way. So we can solve this dilemma in our life. We can experience the life as a whole. So instead of like just functional quality, we serve much deeper significant need of human. And I believe that's, because design is never about just function. It's always have the art part. So it's both fulfill our rational needs and the emotional needs at the same time. So they found artifact in the ancient, even a container, they always have some decoration on top. So that means humans really have these two needs at any time since very early. So the design thinking is it's kind of a circular process. So it's kind of integrated wisdom into a holistic fabric of life. So so the idea is we have to create this design tradition to help us to, like to thrive in this world, to facing all the problems. Because we can practice design from a more broader perspective than traditional practice of material design. So this book, its intention is to create a new culture, a design culture. So the idea is to look at the human condition with purpose to create change, our first tradition. We tie back to this chapter title. So in any particular design, there's a dimension of art, technology, and science. And this inclusiveness way of experience the world can totally enrich our life and give us more tools to solve the world problem. And this, even though all designers strive toward the same goal to add change to the real world, this through the service-related creativity and innovation, both particular and universal way. We mentioned about design, both universal and particular. We solve a universal problem, use a particular method. So culture is never a nature occurrence. So changing a culture is hard. So the book mentioned it's hard. There's always tradition. People are afraid of change. There's all from order to chaos. So how we change this culture is kind of a tough task for us to do. So the idea, because there's always common sense and the people usually take for granted, we never question why, we just take it. So it's very important to create this new culture. We have to be open-minded and with critical thinking. We have to question what we take for granted and find a new way to look at things. So this book is focused on characteristic and quality of cultural tradition that all designers practice to understand the general understanding of design, so we can all create a new design culture. I believe it will help us to bring us to a new way to solve all the problems and create a bright future for the whole world. Thank you.